This Week with George Stephanopoulos starts right now.
Meltdown.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. You're gambling with World War III.
In a stunning Oval Office meeting, President Trump breaks off talks with the Ukrainian president.
It will be difficult without your support.
As Zelenskyy heads to Europe to salvage the alliance. All the fallout this morning in an exclusive interview with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The influencer.
It was a pulse check with you. Do you have a pulse?
Elon Musk holds court over Trump's first cabinet meeting as Doge makes deep cuts felt in the U.S. and around the world.
Our goal is not to be capricious or unfair.
How much power does Musk have? Will his conflicts be questioned and his cuts hold? We break it down this morning. And SoCal strong.
This year has tested your resilience.
All of our resilience.
Ahead of tonight's Academy Awards, Connelly on a nominee's hopes rising from the ashes of the LA wildfires and how the Hollywood community is coming together.
From ABC News, it's This Week. Here now, George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. A week that may have revealed a radical reset of America's place in the world. It began at the United Nations Monday, where the U.S. sided with Russia and North Korea against Ukraine and our allies on a resolution marking the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It reached a boiling point in the Oval Office Friday when President Trump berated President Zelenskyy and expressed solidarity with President Putin. The big questions now, can the U.S. and Ukraine find common cause again? What will it mean for the Western alliance? Why is the president siding with Putin? Secretary of State Rubio will join us for an exclusive interview. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce starts us off.
It's the Oval Office meeting that stunned the world. Tensions behind the high-stakes push to end the war boiling over when President Trump was pressed on concerns he's aligning with Vladimir Putin.
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world.
The vice president jumping in.
The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy.
President Zelenskyy explaining that when they've tried diplomacy in the past, Putin has gone back on his word.
He broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
Trump then scolding the wartime leader.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
The Ukrainian president came to Washington looking for continued U.S. support. Instead, he was berated by President Trump.
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Zelenskyy had hoped to convince Trump to guarantee Ukraine's security if Putin violates a peace deal and tries to invade again. But Trump giving him an ultimatum.
You're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out.
The president dismissing the press, but not before acknowledging the fiery scene they just witnessed.
This is going to be great television, I will say that.
Minutes later, Trump kicking Zelenskyy out of the White House, canceling their planned events. Saying in a post, "I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace if America is involved. I want peace." He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. In the aftermath, top Russian official Dmitry Medvedev applauded what he called Zelensky's slapdown in the Oval Office, while many European allies expressed unwavering support for Ukraine. Leaving the White House for the weekend, the president reiterating his message.
He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace.
Later on Fox News, Zelenskyy offering his point of view.
I'm speaking like a president of a people who are in this struggle 3 years, and they just want to hear that America on our side and that America will stay with us, not with Russians, with us. That's it.
And today, Zelenskyy is looking to shore up support with Europe, meeting with the British Prime Minister and other allies at a summit in London as they scramble to contain the fallout of this explosive encounter in the Oval Office and look to try and come up with a ceasefire plan that they hope President Trump can agree to. But European leaders continue to insist any plan needs a U.S. backstop, that there have to be security guarantees. And so far, that is something that President Trump is not willing to commit to, George.
Mary Bruce, thanks. Let's bring in the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning. Has there been any contact with President Zelenskyy since Friday?
Well, I haven't had any contact with him since Friday. We have plenty of contacts with him, though. Plenty. I mean, he met in the last 10 days, he's met with the Secretary of Commerce. He spoke to the President on the phone, met with the Secretary of Commerce, met with me, met with the Vice President, met with our special envoy, and then was invited and came over on, well, invited, he wanted to come over on Friday to sign this commercial deal. It didn't happen. So there's been plenty of contact with them. I've talked to the foreign minister several times, not since then. And we'll see moving forward. I think the last line in the president's Truth Social post is the one to focus in on, and that is, we'll be ready to re-engage when they're ready to make peace, which is clearly what the president's goal is here. He's trying to get Russia to the table to bring about, to see if there's a way to bring about an end to this conflict. That's his goal. That's his only goal. That's his centralized focus. And, hopefully we'll get to a point where that's possible.
The British Prime Minister said this morning that the United Kingdom and France are working on a peace plan with Ukraine to present to the U.S. Do you know where things stand with that plan?
No, I mean, I've talked to both of the foreign ministers of France and the UK yesterday, and I explained to them sort of the events leading up to what you saw on Friday. Look, I think what's really important here is to understand the dynamic. The president is basically saying there's this horrible war. It's been going on for 3 years. It is a bloody stalemate, a meat grinder type war, and he wants it to end. How does it end? It's very simple. The only way it ends is if Vladimir Putin comes to a negotiating table. And right now, President Trump is the only person on earth who has any chance whatsoever of bringing him to a table to see what it is he would be willing to end the war on. Now, maybe their claims or what they want, their demands will be unreasonable. We don't know, but we have to bring him to the table. You're not going to bring him to the table if you're calling him names, if you're being antagonistic. That's just the president's instincts from years and years and years of putting together deals as someone who's in business. And that's the only goal here.
Let me just stop you there for 1 second.
Why is it a war with no end in sight?
Why is it okay to call President Zelenskyy Why is it okay to call President Zelenskyy a dictator, but not, as you say, call Vladimir Putin names?
Listen, we've spent 3 years calling Vladimir Putin names. That's not the point. The point that we're at now is we're trying to get the man to a table, the Russians. And I've said from the very beginning, maybe they don't want a deal either. We don't know. But we haven't talked to them in 3 years. But maybe they do. The point is, do we want to make... I would ask everybody this. If there are no negotiations, what is the alternative? Another 4 years of war, another 3 years of war, in which the United States and Europe continues to pour billions of dollars into a war in Ukraine? Is that the alternative? I've asked every foreign minister I meet with, tell me your idea of how this turns out. Most don't have a plan. A few have said, well, let's give them another year of fighting. A year from now, a year later, after another year of death, another year of destruction, then maybe Putin will be ready to negotiate at that point. That doesn't sound like a good plan to me, and it certainly is not a plan the president's on board with.
It's not just about getting people to the table. It's about keeping agreements that are made. And that was one of the points that President Zelenskyy was making in the Oval Office on Friday, is that Vladimir Putin has not kept the agreements that were made in the past. Wasn't he right about that?
But what is moving forward is the question, not the past. No one here is claiming Vladimir Putin is going to get the Nobel Peace Prize this year, or that he should be the man of the year of the Humanitarian Association. What we're arguing here is he has a very large country. They're in full war footing. They're cranking out weapons now at a war footing pace. And we need to figure out, is there a way to get them to stop the war. And the only way you're going to do that is to get Russians engaged in negotiations, something the Europeans haven't been able to do, the Biden administration wasn't able to do or didn't even try. That's the goal here. It's that simple. Can we try to sit with them and figure out whether there's anything, what are the Russians' demands, under what conditions would the Russians be willing to stop this war? And as I said, we don't know what those are because we haven't talked to them in 3 years. That's the singular goal here, is to try to bring about an end to this conflict, and it begins by getting them to the table. Ultimately, like any truce, like any peace agreement anywhere in the world, those things will have to be enforced, they'll have to be enduring, there'll have to be safeguards put in place. Everybody understands that. But it begins with the first step, and that is engaging them to see if it's even possible. Because if it's not possible, then what we're looking at is a protracted stalemate with thousands of people dying, billions of dollars pouring in, and more death and destruction. And that's not something the president wants to be a part of. He's made it very clear.
Aren't those talks feasible only if the United States is willing to also provide security guarantees to Ukraine? That was the point that President Zelenskyy was also making in the Oval Office.
Well, the security guarantees, which I actually like to call deterrence of is all contingent upon there being a peace. Everybody's saying security guarantees to secure the peace. You first have to have a peace. We don't even know if the peace is possible. And this was understood by the Ukrainians. It was explained to them repeatedly. And that is, here's our strategy. We're trying to get Putin to a negotiating table. Let's not rehash. Everyone knows the history here, the back and forth. We understand that. We all understand that. But the question now is, can we get them to a table to negotiate? That's our goal. Don't do anything to disrupt that. And that's what Zelenskyy did, unfortunately, is he found every opportunity to try to Ukraine-splain on every issue. Then he confronts the vice president. When the vice president says the goal here is diplomacy, he immediately jumps in and challenges the vice president. Well, what kind of diplomacy? So we all understand, okay, that Putin is not going to be an easy negotiator in this regard. We all get that. But we have to start the process to see if something is even possible. And I honestly am puzzled. I just don't understand. The Biden administration berated Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, put all kinds of conditions and pressure on them to try to get a ceasefire. In this particular case, we've been nice by comparison. And all we're trying to do here is figure out whether a peace is possible. All these other things that people keep bringing up, that'll have to be a part of a negotiation. Right now, there is no negotiation. Shouldn't we at least try to see if there is a way to end this war in a way that's acceptable to both sides and is enduring and sustainable? How is that a bad thing? I really am puzzled why anyone thinks that trying to be a peacemaker is a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when it's Donald Trump trying to do it. When it's President Trump, it's absurd to me.
Well, even some of your Republican allies are puzzled by the steps that President Trump has taken to placate Vladimir Putin. I want to bring up a post that Lisa Murkowski.
Well, which ones? What steps has the president taken to placate?
Let me show you what. Lisa
Are we arming the Russians? Are we providing economic
that.
assistance to the Russians? Have we given the Russians $180 billion?
Please let me ask you the question. This is Lisa Murkowski, and here's what she says. This week started with administration officials refusing to acknowledge that Russia started the war in Ukraine. It ends with a tense and shocking conversation in the Oval Office and whispers from the White House that they may try to end all U.S. support for Ukraine. I know foreign policy is not for the faint of heart, but right now I am sick to my stomach as the administration appears to be walking away from our allies and embracing Putin, a threat to democracy and U.S. values around the world. Those are not my words. That's Senator Lisa Murkowski. What's your response?
Well, yeah, we're a free country. People have a right to these opinions. I would just say to you, what have we done to placate the Russians? The only thing we've done is say, are you guys willing to talk about peace? I say the same point. We're not giving them. We haven't given them.
You voted with North Korea and Russia and you voted with North Korea and Russia and Belarus in the United Nations and against our Western allies.
No, let me tell you. All right. So do you know what the United Nations resolution was? I'll tell you if you want to hear what it was. It basically said this has been a horrible war. It's time for it to end. The job of the UN is to bring about peace in the world. I thought that's what the UN was created to do, to stop wars and to prevent them. And that's what the resolution did. Was it antagonistic towards the Russians? No. Back to the point. But it also didn't praise the Russians. All it said is, this is a bad war. It needs to end. And by the way, at the Security Council, which has not been widely reported, the first resolution on Ukraine that has passed the Security Council in 3 years, passed this week because of the leadership of President Trump, and it's a resolution that says, bad war needs to end, let's bring the two sides together. That's what the resolution is. Again, what is the United Nations for? Isn't it not a forum to promote peace in the world? And shouldn't we all be happy that we have a president who's trying to stop wars and prevent them instead of start them? And I just don't get it. I really don't, other than the fact that it's Donald J. Trump. If this was a Democrat that was doing this, everyone would be saying, well, he's on his way to the Nobel Peace Prize. This is absurd. We are trying to end a war. You cannot end a war unless both sides come to the table, starting with the Russians. And that is the point the president has made. And we have to do whatever we can to try to bring them to the table to see if it's even possible. I'm not promising you it's possible. I'm not telling you it's 90% likely. I'm saying it's 0% likely if we don't get them to a negotiating table. And the sooner everyone grows up around here and figures out that this is a bad war that's heading in a bad direction with death and destruction and all kinds of dangers surrounding it that could spiral into a broader conflict, the sooner people grow up and realize that, I think the more progress we're going to be able to make. But the president's crystal clear. He campaigned on it, and he's going to govern on it. And that is, he is going to be a president that tries to achieve peace, and he has been very clear this is a war that would have never happened had Donald Trump been in the White House, and it needs to end, and we're going to do everything we can to end it in an enduring and sustainable and fair way.
You said in your confirmation hearings that Russia will have to make concessions to get a peace deal. What concessions do you expect them to make?
Well, why would I say that on a news broadcast? That's what negotiations are about. That's the problem here. Again, this is not a messaging exercise, okay? This is, can they get to a table? And then there's hard work to be done. You're absolutely right. I'm not telling you this is an easy peace deal. The Russians will give you a 30-minute lecture on the history of Ukraine and this, that, and the other. The Ukrainians have their own point of view. There's no doubt about it. But what peace deal in the history of the world has ever been easy? That's the hard work of diplomacy. That's exactly what the vice president was alluding to. That's what peace deals involve. You've covered this. You've been around for a long time. These conflicts are not easy to solve. But you can't solve them at all if you don't even have a process to try to solve it, if you don't have the parties at the table. And right now, that's been our goal. It's been explained crystal clear to the Ukrainians and the Europeans and everyone else who wants to know for weeks now. For weeks now. And the only thing they were told is, do not do things to derail it. And sadly, President Zelenskyy, couldn't contain himself in that regard. I hope this could all be reset. I hope he comes to the realization that we're actually trying to help his country here before it suffers thousands of more casualties. 3 million people have already left Ukraine. Are they ever going to be able to come back? He's got Ukrainians being held prisoner, including children, on the Russian side. Why is any of this good for anybody? And the argument that we're going to just keep it going forever, that's absurd. So it's time to bring the Russians to the table, if it's even possible, and see if there's a way forward that ends this conflict and makes sure it never happens again. That's our goal. That remains our goal. That's the president's goal.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Let's bring in the British Ambassador to the United States, Lord Peter Mandelson. Lord Mandelson, thank you for joining us this morning. You just heard Secretary Rubio there. Your response?
My response is that we need a very radical reset, as you say in the caption behind you. And the reset has to consist of the United States and Ukraine getting back on the same page, and President Zelenskyy giving his unequivocal backing to the initiative that President Trump is taking to end the war and to bring a just and lasting peace to Ukraine. And the Europeans, George, too, they need to back the calls for a ceasefire. And by the way, I think that Ukraine should be the first to commit to a ceasefire and defy the Russians to follow. And then as part of the unfolding plan for this negotiation, the Europeans and perhaps some other countries too have got to consider how they are going to put forces on the ground to play their part in providing enduring security and deterrence for Ukraine. Now, that's the reset that we're looking for. That's what the British Prime Minister is working for in his meeting in London today.
And if there's been any progress yet, I know the meetings are going on right now, but you seem to suggest that it's up to the Ukrainians first to come forward and say yes?
Well, look, after what happened on Friday, it's clear that we need to bring the United States and Ukraine back together again. And I think the first thing that President Zelenskyy can do is to make clear his commitment to the initiative that President Trump is taking. And yes, I do think it would be a good idea if he signed the economic and commercial deal put forward by the United States. And the reason I say that is, quite apart from the economic gain that Ukraine will derive from that, it will also give the United States a stake in Ukraine's future. It will mean that U.S. commercial interests, U.S. individuals, citizens will be on the ground there, and that will be an even greater added incentive for the U.S. to protect the Ukraine in future and make sure that war does not ensue again. That's what I want to see. That's what we all want to see. It takes both the United States and Ukraine to come together and make sure that this whole initiative is given the best possible likelihood of success. Because, George, it is the only show in town. It's the only negotiation available, and it's got to be made to work. And that's what we in Britain are very committed to help bring about.
Well, what kind of security guarantees can be put in place in order to get Ukraine to sign that agreement?
Well, I think it's very important that as the negotiations get underway, the Europeans own part of this overall plan, are developed, are agreed amongst them, and made clear to the Ukrainians. And that does mean European forces, both on land and in air and at sea, made available to ensure that there is an effective deterrence against any Russian further incursion into an attack on Ukraine. And yes, we would also like to see the US giving us a cover for this. We want to know that the US is covering our backs in what we're putting into Ukraine on the ground, and that there is some sort of ultimate backstop where the US is saying, look, you're going first, the primary responsibility is for the Europeans, but we're going to be there if things get really nasty. The Russians need to know that they're going to answer to the United States as well as to the Europeans on the ground. That's what we would like to see.
President Trump has said he trusts Putin to keep a deal. Does the United Kingdom?
Well, that remains to be seen. But one thing I know of is whatever we might think of President Putin, and we are very, very clear in our commitment to Ukraine and its future in this situation, we have to give peace a chance. We have to to create the circumstances in which enough pressure is brought on Putin, on Russia, to bring them, to coax them, to force them to the negotiating table. And then we will see the true color of their intentions and what they're prepared to agree and to stand by. But if it goes wrong, we must be there on Ukraine's side, continuing to arm them, to make sure that they have the capacity to withstand any further Russian attack, with ourselves lining up behind them in that eventuality.
Ambassador Mandelson, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up, Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar responds, plus analysis with Christie and Donna, Brazil. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. I want to bring in Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Senator, thank you for joining us this morning. You've heard Secretary Rubio, you've heard Ambassador Mandelson. Your response?
We stand with our friends, not our enemies. We go into negotiations. The great country of America goes into negotiations with strength, not surrender. And I was appalled by what happened in the Oval Office. I was with President Zelenskyy, with a number of Republican and Democratic senators before he left for the White House. He was in great spirits. He was excited to go and sign this minerals agreement, which is something that was very important to President Trump. And I think this actually what's come out of this is not in President Trump's best interest. And so he went there, and I just couldn't believe it. I watched that video like 3 times, George, and I hope you played clips. It was Vice President Vance, particularly, who was on the offense, who was berating President Zelenskyy, who simply was trying to explain that this was, in fact, we needed a strong security commitment from all of our allies to be able to have a lasting peace, which is something that President Trump says that he wants to see.
As you said, you met with President Zelenskyy before he went down to the White House. He wasn't expecting this to happen. Do you think it was a setup?
You know what? Either it was an ambush setup or they just got so hot-headed, the president and the vice president, that what happened happened. You know, it's the chaos of this presidency. It's chaos is up, corruption is up, costs are up. Just ask anyone in the egg aisle. I don't think the people of America bought into this. 3% of them side with Russia in this conflict and nearly 60% with Ukraine. So my hope, listening to the Secretary of State today, the British ambassador, there is still an opening here, and that is what I care about. And so many of Americans, or the soldiers that I just saw last weekend from Ukraine who were getting medical help with hook arms, trying to stand up for the Ukrainian national anthem with one leg. You know, this is not the time for us to undermine these brave Ukrainians. I'm sure you've been there. I have seen the mass graves in Bucha, the burnt-out apartment buildings in Irpin, all because of a dictator, Vladimir Putin. So when I listened to the Secretary of State today, I did note that he said numerous times that they're still interested in a peace agreement. There's a major meeting going on today in Great Britain with 17 European allies. You've got another meeting going on in Brussels where they want to come together. You've got France and Great Britain coming to the table saying, we'll put soldiers forth to make sure that there's a security protection with this agreement. That's a big deal. I just want to remind your viewers here that America and our allies, including Japan and South Korea, that's 50% of the economy. World economy. And Russia's like at 2%. So I think we know who our friends are, who stood with us after 9/11. Our friends are these allies, and we need to make this work. So anything we can do to get this back on track, we must do.
What does President Zelenskyy need to know? You heard Secretary Rubio say that he needs to accept the idea that we need a peace agreement. Now they need to see something from Zelenskyy. What can he do now? Do you think he made a mistake in the Oval Office?
I did not, and I'm glad that he went on Fox News and did an interview after. I think he was just trying to explain his situation, and that is that they are grateful to America. He said that. He said that numerous times in private and public meetings. He said it hundreds of times. He presented a flag to Republicans and Democrats in Congress signed by soldiers on the front line saying thank you. So that was just an all-out lie that he has never thanked our country. I think that he needs to go to Europe. I think they need to all come together with an agreement, with the idea for how we can do this. I think they're going to have to come back to America, either diplomatically or in person, and we're going to have to get this moving again. And President Trump considers this minimal agreement a positive, and that's going to clearly be part of the lure in getting this done and getting everyone to the table. Because I just think Americans' leadership was so hurt by what happened in the White House, and we need to get that back again.
Senator Klobuchar, thanks for your time this morning. I want to bring in Christie and Donna, Brazile right now. Chris, let me begin with you. I don't think any of us has seen a meeting in the Oval Office like that in our time in Washington in modern American history. What's your take on what happened?
Well, look, I think the important thing, George, is to understand the why of it. You know, people try to put Trump into a box of either isolationist or interventionist. He's neither, in my view. He's a transactionalist. And what that means is all he cares about is what he perceives to be what's in his best interest for that moment. And, you know, you heard Senator Rubio talk about the deals that he's made. Well, they're all real estate deals, George, right? And you look at what he's done here, Greenland, Panama Canal, you know, Canada is the 51st state. It's about him wanting to acquire something and use whatever tactics he's always used in his life, which is bullying, belittling, suing, pressuring to try to get what he wants to get. And that's what you saw go on in the Oval Office. I don't think it was a setup, George. I think it was J.D. Vance lit the fuse, and Trump said, okay. His instincts took back over, and what you saw is nothing unusual for Donald Trump. It's highly unusual, as you mentioned, to happen in that kind of setting, but not for him. The second thing I'd say is this shows, again, kind of a lack of an understanding of history and a lack of empathy. Because here's Zelenskyy. I've been to Ukraine. I sat in his office in August of 23, sandbagged, burlap over the windows. This is a guy under 3 years of siege in his country. Of course he's going to react when J.D. Vance asks him essentially to trust Putin. And he did react. Now, if Zelenskyy was perfect, he wouldn't have reacted.
Right.
Okay? But he's not perfect, and he's under 3 years of that kind of pressure. I would love to see what President Trump would look like if he were 3 years as a wartime president and how he might react. So that lack of empathy from Trump, which has always been there, is what was on display as well.
It looked like a setup, George, in the sense that, yeah, the vice president. Look, I've worked for vice presidents. You've never seen a vice president participate in that manner in an Oval Office discussion. Look, beyond the setup aspect of it and the fact that the Russian media was there and not the Associated Press, that's another conversation. But I agree with what the ambassador said. The important thing now is for the Europeans to show initiative, to come back to the table. We know the kind of negotiator Donald Trump is. He wants something from the Ukrainians, fine. But we also should demand as Americans that we do not wish in the middle of a war to change sides, to side with a dictator, to side with Vladimir Putin, who just 2 years ago was issued an arrest warrant for taking children for the war crimes. So I think it's important that preparation be done, because it looked like there was no preparation, but more importantly, that the United States come in as an honest broker to bring our ally and our friends together and to confront the monster that we have been dealing with.
I think one of the strangest things of watching the meeting, Chris, is seeing how personal this was for President Trump. He clearly is upset with President Zelenskyy. It probably goes back to what started his first impeachment. And he clearly believes, in his mind, despite what U.S. intelligence officials say, which is that Russia did interfere in our elections, that Vladimir Putin is a victim along with him.
Well, he certainly does. Look, and I don't think he even cares whether Putin's a victim or not, George. I think that's just rhetoric. He's the victim in his mind, and that's the most important thing. Again, a transactionalist. What's it mean for me? What's in it for me? And he's still angry about what happened back then. And look, quite frankly, there was a lot about that Russia investigation that I was with you at the time, that I said at the time that I thought was ridiculous and overblown, that there was some coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians. But that's old news. What we need to understand is, and what I think the president should try to do now, is to understand the part of the problem here is that he looks and sounds like an ally of Putin. And, Secretary Rubio was saying, well, we got to get Putin to the table. Well, you can get someone to the table in a number of different ways. And it's not just through honey. Sometimes it's also through letting them know, we're going to continue to stand with our friends. And you're not going to have any alternative but continue to have this war as well.
And let's be clear, as Senator Marco Rubio chaired the committee that investigated the Russian attempt to influence our election. He did it. He signed his name along with Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. I have a lot of back history with this. The important point now in going forward, I agree, we need a ceasefire. I mean, how are you going to negotiate when Russia is trying to bomb the hell still out of Ukraine? We need a ceasefire. We need the Europeans to come back to the table, meet with Trump, flatter him, do whatever you need. But the bottom line is the American people should demand that the United States stay on the same side with our allies for over 80 years.
Thank you both for your time this morning. Up next, a look at Elon Musk's unprecedented powers he slashes the federal government. We're back in a moment.
What about his business? What if there is
then we won't let
contract he would otherwise
let
get?
him do it. If he's got a conflict. I mean, look, he's in certain areas.
I haven't asked the president for anything ever.
And if it comes up, how will you handle it?
Well,
he won't be involved.
Yeah, I'll recuse myself if it is.
If there's a conflict, he won't be involved. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want that, and he won't want it.
President Trump and Elon Musk dismissing concerns about conflicts of interest as the tech billionaire continues his sweeping overhaul of the federal government. But Musk has virtually no oversight. He continues to lead companies that have received billions in federal funds. Here's senior White House correspondent Selina Wang.
He didn't have an official seat at the table, but this week Elon Musk took center stage at President Trump's first cabinet meeting.
So I'm going to ask if it's possible to have Elon get up first and talk about Doge, because it seems to be of great interest to everyone.
Trump calling on Musk first, a show of unprecedented power in the hands of the richest man in the world. Musk infiltrating the federal bureaucracy at rapid speed through his newly formed Department of Government Efficiency and its crusade to slash government spending.
The overall goal here with the Doge team is to help address the enormous deficit. We simply cannot sustain as a country a $2 trillion deficit.
Musk directing mass firings and calling for the dismantling of entire federal agencies. As the Pentagon braces for thousands of layoffs any day now, this 30-year veteran, currently working for the Army Corps of Engineers, tells me he started the hunt for a new job.
It's almost like a slap in the face, like we don't even matter, we don't count.
This federal worker who says he was recently fired from the General Services Administration, rebuking Musk.
Literally in my position, I save more money than I am paid in salary. That's my job.
And the State Department eliminating over 90% of foreign aid contracts, terminating U.S. aid funding for HIV, malaria, and refugee camps around the world. USAID employees given just minutes this week to pack up their desks. The White House ordering all agencies to work with Musk's team to submit plans for large-scale layoffs by March 13th. Trump making his stance clear.
Anybody unhappy with Elon? If you are, well, throw him out of here.
Musk is using the same playbook he implemented after taking over Twitter, laying off thousands of employees and firing top executives.
We're really just going through doing very basic things here. It's as bad as Twitter was, the federal government is much worse.
Department of Government Efficiency originally claimed to have saved $65 billion in government funds, but only provided a list of contract cancellations and lease terminations totaling $9.6 billion, a drop in the bucket when it comes to overall U.S. spending of $6.75 trillion in 2024 alone. Musk claims his work is out in the open.
You know what's better than saying trust me? It's just full transparency.
But Musk never disclosing who actually works on his team. ABC has learned Doge is staffed by many young engineers from Musk's private companies, many with no experience in government policy. Sources tell ABC News Musk began formal planning for Doge a month before Election Day, his team quickly gaining access to sensitive data from several federal agencies. Musk now overseeing sweeping cuts, even as his companies benefited from some of those very agencies. SpaceX and Tesla awarded at least $18 billion in federal contracts over the last decade. And the Washington Post reporting Musk and his businesses have received at least $38 billion in government contracts, loans, subsidies, and tax credits. For This Week, Selina Wang, ABC News, Washington.
Thanks to Selina for that. We're joined now by the Associated Press Executive Editor Julie Pace, our senior political correspondent Rachel Scott. And Rachel, your day job as you cover Congress. Elon Musk has gotten a real head start on congressional oversight here, but they're starting to face to get backlash now in their home districts, members of Congress.
I talked to several Republicans who went back home to their districts, were in these town halls with angry constituents. And, one Republican told me, look, this is not just Democrats that are coming forward. They're hearing from Republicans. I talked to one Republican in Georgia, and he told me he now is asking the Trump administration and Elon Musk to have a little bit more compassion with how all of this is happening, because it's happening at such a rapid pace. It's not only members of Congress that are blindsided, caught off guard by it. It's also a lot of these agencies as well. What was notable about that cabinet meeting and the president saying, well, does anyone, disagree with what Elon Musk is doing? You have several members of the president's cabinet that also pushed back against some of those emails sent to federal workers telling their employees to hold off on responding. And so, yes, right now, though some Republicans are not speaking as publicly about it, you do have some that are saying to this administration and to Elon Musk, have a little bit more compassion in how this is rolling out here, because it is affecting our constituents even in red districts.
And Julie, this is going to complicate the efforts to keep the government funded. Government funding runs out on March 14th, and now now those negotiations are taking place as Congress is rebelling against some of these cuts.
Right, you're going to start to see these two different tracks of work start to come together, because the question is how much government funding is actually needed if we're going to see federal agencies that are going to be shrinking here. Are we going to be funding the government at its current level, or are we going to be funding it at a level that sees these reductions built into place? And really, who has that control? Ultimately, this funding mechanism has gone through Congress, but now we're seeing that power really shift to the executive branch and Elon Musk and Doge.
And what are we expecting from President Trump when he addresses Congress this week, Tuesday night?
I think it's going to be interesting to see which version of President Trump shows up at this joint address. Obviously, this is coming right after you have Elon Musk, the Department of Government Efficiency, move so quickly with their efforts to try to cut what they are calling waste and fraud in the American government, and also shrink the size of the federal workforce, also coming off of the heels of this explosive meeting with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy. And so does the president focus on the message that he campaigned on, right? Cutting costs for Americans as we were about to go into tariffs on imports from from Mexico and Canada. Does he focus on costs, or does he also focus on some of the things that Elon Musk has been doing? Does he praise Elon Musk? I think this is going to be an interesting and pivotal moment. And then also how Democrats respond. I'm learning that some House Democrats may not even show up to this meeting. Do Democrats try and show a show of force for Ukraine here? And it's going to be notable to see how Republicans respond in that room if there's any mention of Ukraine as well.
Well, and I think so much of this for President Trump is about that opportunity to be able to say, this is an effort to help you, the American public, because that ultimately is what he will be judged on, is, are these actions in Washington, which may be controversial, they may look chaotic, will they ultimately help Americans in terms of their own economic security? And so, that is, you're right, Rachel, that is the opportunity for him if he wants to take it to make that case.
There's so much going on here, it's hard to keep up with all of it. One of the things I want to ask you about, Julie, you're the executive editor of the Associated Press. The Associated Press has now been blocked from covering the White House because you refuse to call the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. Where do things stand right now? How has it affected your coverage?
Sure. Thank you for asking. So I think the first thing I would say is the Associated Press is 179 years old. We're a global, independent, nonpartisan news organization that's had a commitment to covering the White House since our founding. And, really, you mentioned this is about Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. Yes, it's about that, but it's also about something so much bigger. This is about freedom of speech, and that is a principle, a right that Americans across the political spectrum believe in deeply. This is about whether the government can control the language that we use, that ordinary people can use, and it's about whether the government can retaliate against you if you don't use the language that they prefer. So we are standing up for that right, not just for the AP, but for all independent news organizations and for the public, because we believe, again, that this is a principle, freedom of speech, that all Americans, regardless of their political party, should believe in.
Any sense of how it's going to end?
We certainly hope that it results in us being allowed back in to cover White House events, because we're there to be the eyes and ears for Americans and people around the world.
Thank you, folks, for joining us today. We'll be right back. 97th Academy Awards will be awarded in Hollywood tonight, nearly 2 months after wildfires devastated so much of Southern California. Chris Connelly brings us the story of one nominee who was directly impacted and how Hollywood is coming together to help those still in need.
Here are the nominees.
Music and lyric by Diane Warren.
Written by Diane Warren.
Music and lyric by Diane Warren.
What in life is truly inevitable? Death, taxes, and Diane Warren with an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song.
It's the journey. It's the getting there to where you're going to.
Appearing in the Tyler Perry, Kerry Washington film, The 688, The Journey, sung by her, marks the 16th nomination of Diane Warren's songwriting career. Infamously, she has yet to win an Oscar in 15 previous tries. Yet her current streak of 8 consecutive Best Song nominations is the longest in Oscar history. This nomination for this song is breaking records for you, right?
I'm breaking my own record of losing this many times. I say that in humor, because
Yes.
I'm honored to be nominated. It's very hard to get nominated for an Academy Award.
1998's I Don't Want to Miss a Thing from Armageddon, Aerosmith's only #1 single, a nominated example of Diane's songwriting craft. What sort of feeling do you get that tells you I am onto something good?
I just feel it, like I get chills, might make me cry. And that happened with The Journey. That chorus just came, and I just, I think I had tears in my eyes with that one.
It's the journey.
Then this year, in early January, Diane at her idyllic Malibu beach house.
It was a beautiful place. It was the last song I recorded there was The Journey.
One week later, this would be all that was left of Diane's beach house, like thousands of other homes destroyed by the LA fires. This year has tested your resilience.
All of our resilience.
All the times you thought you'd never make it.
The song, The Journey, it really soundtracks what the energy is like in the aftermath of the wildfires here in Los Angeles.
were shopping for furniture because everything that we had was burned to the ground.
Zello Support, an industry volunteer group, partnering with studios to supply furniture from movie sets for displaced fire victims free of charge.
And we could schedule shopping experiences for families who were impacted by the fires.
Performers Mark Gabaldon and Abby Anderson lost everything. Now they're starting over with show-stopping set pieces from Wicked.
This would be Galinda's room divider. It called to me and it said, "I'm here for you, Abby." It's very soothing to have beautiful art, to refurbish our home, and it's just so full of like love.
Here we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. This is Hollywood community coming together and helping LA rebuild.
We're going to get through it. Go through hell, but still you're going to make it through. The song really resonates in the moment. That's the message I hear from people, that it's really giving them a lot of strength.
Diane Warren was given an honorary Oscar in 2022 for her extraordinary career. But tonight she's hoping to complete her journey with her first Oscar win. We'll all be watching. George?
Good luck to Diane Warren. Thanks to Chris Connelly. And you can see the full special Countdown to the Oscars streaming now on Hulu and Disney+. Thanks for sharing part of your Sunday with us. Tune into the Oscars tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow on GMA.